everybody. Uh, I am one of the people that was privileged to write the original WAC, the original RCW, and the original waiver for Center for Medicaid Medicare Services to create the actual role of a peer counselor in the state of Washington. And we're modeled a little bit after Texas, a little bit after Georgia. And that in those days, there was a nonprofit doing parent partner work, but there was no certified peers. And we knew that the adults needed peers, and we knew that the adults needed youth too. So, um, a bunch of people sitting around somebody's kitchen table one day drinking coffee said, well, we could do all those things, you know. And we got some help from Olympia, and we did. The first place that I saw parent partners at work was in public schools with kids in special education. Children and youth that are in behavioral health services, 97% are also in special ed, or they are behind in school, or they have dropped out of school. Those are the kids we want to catch and going to supposedly have a safety net. Safety nets come and go. Some work, some don't. I was on loan to the juvenile court for 3 years part-time for a venture called JJ 101 or Juvenile Justice 101, which did create some bonds, and there was somebody in the courtroom that would come and talk to the parent and say, what can we do to help your family be stronger, get stronger, feel safer? Um, the kids they weren't being told much by their public defender other than don't say anything. At one point, they called it the cattle call at the beginning of juvenile court was referred to as the not guilty factory. Just go in, plead not guilty, move on. And no one knew what they were doing. So we had a video and we interviewed people from the public defender's office about their role, the prosecutors, juvenile justice, probation counselors, programs. You can do this. You can have this. It's your right for if you elect to. And that opened it up into a whole different world. And then I started looking outside of the juvenile justice and the special education world, and it was like nobody is working with each other. I have clinicians in the agency that had hired me. I was hired, like I said, before there were peer counselors. I was hired under a federal grant, a $5 million 5-year grant called Children and Families in Common. And one of the biggest challenges we had was building those relationships between families, youth, professionals. And the peer, the certified peer, becomes the bridge. I remember sitting at a meeting with a family that was very upset about their child was in the hospital following a suicide attempt. And the person from the school district was saying, we can do XYZ. And all of a sudden, the dad just stood up and said, you don't care about my kid, and ran out. And the school district guy says, Kathy, what did I say? I said, it isn't what you said, Chris. It's what he heard you say. You say things, it's not just the words you use, it's your facial expression, it's your body language, it's the tone of your voice. It's how you preface things. Instead of, well, we could do this, you start with, I'm sorry about your daughter. I'm sorry she's not doing well. What can we do to help? And I found that to be the best thing I ever had when it came to working with families and professionals that needed to come together and that there was a lot of bad feelings on both sides. So I'll give you an example. Some of you know my only friend story. My only friend. My only friend is Jody Shrebin. She works on a WISE team, and she's been a peer counselor for 12 years now. I met her. She was one of my clients, and I was instructed to call her up, which I didn't like to do. I said, oh, I don't call people. They call me. My boss told me to do it, so I did it. And she said hello, and I said, hi, I'm Kathy. I'm the peer counselor. And my happy little voice. And she said, yeah? What the fuck are you going to do for me? And I thought, oh my gosh, nobody has served this woman. So I said, well, I don't know. What do you need done? What do you need me to do? And she says, I need somebody to come to my kid's school and tell him to quit kicking him out every day, 45 minutes into the school day, because I can't work and now I can't pay my mortgage. I said, well, that's something I can do. I'd be happy to do that. In fact, I'm kind of good at it. What time's your meeting? And she says, 7 a.m. tomorrow. I said, well, just for future reference, I normally don't get up that early unless the bed's on fire, but I'll make an exception this one time. When I went to the school to meet her in the parking lot, I invited her over to my car and I opened the trunk of my car and said, I need you to put all your fear and all your anger in the trunk of my car. We're not taking it in that building. We're going to go in that building and we're going to negotiate something that works for you and your kid, that they can deliver, that we can hold them accountable to deliver. And she looked at me like I was a complete weirdo, which she would find out I was later. And she did what I'd asked her to do. And I said, now, when you get out of here, if you're still pissed, we can go to Starbucks. I'll open the trunk. You can take it all out and we'll trash talk them the way we have coffee. And that was the day that the school district decided that they would rather pay $8,000 a month to send her child to a specialty school for kids with behavioral health needs instead of just locking him in a secured classroom and kicking him out first thing every morning. And the way we did that was by not having the anger and not having the fear in the room. And we did that by reasonable um, conversations. And yes, occasionally the school district would push back, and I would say, well, I'm sorry, but pursuant to WAC 392-172A-3115, this is something to which the student is entitled and to which the district is responsible to provide. Wouldn't you agree? Or I could say quote the WAC and say, I know that we both want to follow the law. What does it look like in this school for this child? And that's how that went. And I was still working with her a few weeks later. She called and she was almost crying. And if you know my only friend, she's a tough lady. She doesn't cry. And I said, what happened? And she said, well, Joshua got mad at me and he said that I'm da-da-da-da-da, bad words. And that nobody likes me. I don't have any friends except you and you don't count. I said, well, I don't think that's true. I think I count. And, it's funny, but a lot of people think I'm kind of a blankety blank too. So you could be my only friend, I'll be your only friend, and then we'll always have a friend. And to this day, when I call her cell phone, the screen says my only friend. Her children hated that. They, you know, they went on a lot of field trips after we got together. We went to places where she could have a voice, and she learned how to have that voice in the appropriate place, the appropriate tone, the appropriate everything. I think maybe 6 weeks into my work with her, there was a county council meeting coming up, and they were going to cut mental health funding for several programs, and it was going to amount to 47%. That cut was going to be almost half. And so I just took everybody at my parent resource and support group. We went on a field trip that night, and I showed them everybody how to sign in, and they thought they were just signing in like, attendance. And I signed them all up to speak for 3 minutes at the mic. And she's like, what am I going to say? I said, you're going to say what's in your heart. You only got 3 minutes, so, you don't have time to make anything up, kiddo. She was the last person to speak, and she made 4 out of the 7 council members tear up. And the next day, those cuts had dropped to 11% because they heard the voices of the people and the family members of the people they were going to hurt in advance. And I was so happy. I started to work with the county council. I started with my county councilman. They take your phone calls because you vote for them. And they were able to see that the systems have silos. There's This part of this money is for this and only this, and you have to live in this zip code. And, how many times do you have to, it's like with my kids. I remember being told with my kids, well, she has to have at least 5 ear infections in a 6-month period for us to do the ear, nose, and throat surgery. And I'm like, are you serious? And that's kind of what it was like. It was a fail first proposition. Go to school, struggle, don't get it, and then we'll give you special ed. We won't do any, and the same thing with mental health. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? We can't really do that. And part of my job was just to ask people the same question. What do you need? And I would ask them in front of the systems of care representative, whether that was legal or medical or SUD or whatever. What do you need? What can the system do for you? I did not say, oh, we have the XYZ program, and then there's this person from ABC, and I can get you this. Do you want a free food basket? Yeah, no. I want to feel like there's a reason to get up in the morning. So asking questions is something I'm really good at. Listening is something I learned to do as a peer. I really did not. I thought I listened, but going through the training that I had taught me how to really listen. And when we look at the models of delivering services like RAP works, it says in there, listen. That's one of the 10 principles. And then three lines down, it says, really listen. Because it is the most important thing we can do. And a lot of professionals did not know how to do that. They knew how to offer services. They knew how to offer resources. They knew how to listen and say, and how does that make you feel? Well, obviously pretty bad, or I wouldn't be here telling you about it. We learn to honor that each person is an individual, and they're just not going to, maybe they're gonna need surgery before they have 5 ear infections in 6 months. That's not how that works. So when I first went to work in Bellevue, in an office for a community-based nonprofit mental health provider, I went to a meeting, and the mother was feeling really anxious. She had twin boys. They were 15. They were doing bad things. They were like shoplifting and smoking weed, not going to school. They were not very nice to their mother. And their counselor was there. I always thought it was kind of weird that one counselor was for both boys, even though they were twins. You'd think they'd want their own. But anyway, they had been put on at-risk youth petitions, and they'd been in front of a judge. And we were talking about how they weren't in compliance with the court order, and I said, you do understand that the judge could send you to juvenile detention. And the one kid looked at me and says, yeah, but my public defender says they just give you the key to get out anyway. I said, oh. So when he said that, did you think that he meant a little metal object that you can unlock a door with? He goes, yeah. I said, no, that's not how it is. I said, the key to get out is the judge can say, yeah, I'm going to send you to detention. And after you give me a 20 or 30-page essay on the word responsibility, and I approve it, then you can get out. Oh, wow, that wasn't good. And then the other kid said, well, I heard juvie is cool. They give you a candy bar just to go to school. I said, I don't know anything about that. But I have a kid that was in juvie, and she told her sister when she came home that you never want to go there, and if you do, if there are lumps in the cream of wheat, they are not raisins. If the chicken legs are really small and have a slightly seafood smell to them, they ran out of food and they killed seagulls in the parking lot and fed it to the kids. She told her all kinds of stuff like that. And the boys were very subdued after that. The therapist ran down the hallway to the program manager and said, I don't want Cathy to come to my meetings anymore. He said she has very poor boundaries because I talked about my own child, my lived experience. And my boss turned around, she looked at him, and she said, Cathy had a boundary? Even a bad one? That's awesome. And then she explained what the difference was. Being the only non-clinical person on a clinical team in a staff meeting was hard in the beginning, and then it got beautiful. They started to see the difference, that I respected what their ethical boundaries were as professionals, and they understood that I didn't have the same ones, and that together we could help this family, because I have nothing but respect for the jobs they do. They weren't too sure about me. They weren't even aware sometimes, I think, of how they sounded. I had another peer do a role play with me one time at a staff meeting, and I played the part. Um, my peer and I played the part of the teacher, the special teacher, and the mental health counselor getting together before the meeting. And then the mom came in. But before she came in, we trash talked her pretty good. Oh, look, she's late again, too. Jesus. Oh, my gosh. Ah, that mom. I was that mom. That mom from hell. That was me before I figured out that I wasn't getting what I needed by being just bombastic and loud and sarcastic and insulting. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, at one point I think I did offer somebody in the school district the opportunity to have me twist their head off, spit in it, and give them twice the brains they started life with. They do not like that suggestion, by the way, just so you know. I don't do that anymore. I learned, like I said, becoming a peer counselor was the best thing I did for myself as well as my family. Anyway, we we did this, and when the staff got to see with their own eyes what it looked like from the outside, they started pushing back. And so then we're getting team meeting appointments or invitations, I guess, from the school, and they're saying, can we all meet 10 minutes before the meeting, before the parents come so we can talk? And I wrote back and said, talk about them, you mean? and the clinician stepped in and said, no, we're not going to talk about them when they're not there. This is not how this works. Nothing about us without us. It's not just a saying, it's a reality. And people have to be of any age, really, but from 13 and up, people have to be involved in their treatment. They have to have a voice and a choice. And if you're not giving that, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. We had a real life example of that one time where the mom was late. She's habitually late. I kind of get that because I have that issue myself. Um, and people were saying just, oh, she just doesn't care about this kid. She's not here. That's proof of the fact that I said, you know what? I'm going to go give her a call real quick. I'm going to step out. You know where she was? She was in her car in our parking lot, crying, trying to compose herself before this meeting because she had a shut-off notice from Puget Power. And she did not know how she was going to keep electricity in her house for her kids at night. And she did not want to share that with them. And I said, you know what? It's okay. You can if you want to. We don't have to. When the meeting's over, we're going to go down the hall to the lady that handles that, and we'll take care of it. And I got a Subway gift card for you, so you don't have to worry about cooking dinner tonight. Take the boys to Subway. We'll handle it. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we'll get a promise to pay letter faxed over, and then we'll not shut your power off. But no one said, she's late. I hope she's okay. No one said, you were late. Did something go wrong? Is there something we can help with? They said, oh, you're finally here. They didn't get it. Mom was scared to tell them They weren't receptive to hearing it. I had to be the bridge. That's the peer counselor bridge. I could talk to mom, but then I could also go and talk to the people afterwards. And I hope, I think, probably made them take a second look at their own judgments and their own reception of someone who is seeking help. It's not easy to ask for help. Been there, done that. I get it. Believe me. And when it's your kid, you feel a lot of blame and shame. Oh my gosh, that parent. If they could just make that kid mind, if they could just get that kid up in the morning, if they got that kid involved in sports, if they read to them every night for 20 minutes. I did all those things, and guess what? Bipolar didn't care. It came to visit my child anyway. Going to church every Sunday does not prevent that either, just so you know. It came, and with it came the desire to not feel that way and to self-medicate and to run the streets and to finally, at the age of 12, I got a phone call from Texas, and it was Texas Children's Hospital, and they said they had my 12-year-old daughter there in the emergency room, that she had been raped, sodomized, and left for dead on the side of the road. And then they wanted to know what my insurance ID number was per my medical care. I said, well, I happen to have a really good insurance. I worked for Boeing at the time. And I will give you all that information after you tell me about my daughter. Tell me about my daughter. Tell me about my daughter. And it was a holiday weekend that Sunday. The next day was a holiday, federal holiday. And they told me that they didn't have a social worker on duty, so they were just going to let my 12-year-old walk out of the emergency room after they did a rape kit. After they removed a broken beer bottle from inside her body and a broken rat-tailed comb. They were going to let her go. So I called the police, and I was born in Brazos County, Texas, so I can do the accent pretty good if I want to. And he said, well, ma'am, what can I do? She hasn't committed a crime. I said, she's a witness to a crime. There was another girl there, too. She needs protective custody. He says, oh, that's pretty smart. He went over and picked her up and put her in the infirmary overnight. We got a plane ticket sent down there, and he drove her to the airport, got her on the plane. But it was that life experience that made me want to never have someone feel the way I felt. Blamed, shamed, unserved, rebuffed. Um, people telling me I can't tell you anything about your kid's therapy. I don't want you to tell me anything my kid says to you in therapy. God, I'm glad she tells you and not me. Come on. But here's what we are going to do. Here's what HIPAA really says. It says that you can identify, you give me 5 minutes at the beginning or the end of any session. My kid makes the choice what it's going to be. And you give me one goal that's on that treatment plan that her father and I can help her and support her to reach. Because we're with her every day. And you see her 50 minutes a week. And it worked. And we became a team. And that's what everybody really needs. You know how they say everybody needs a village? It takes a village. Build your own network. That's super hard. And when you get to be an adult and you don't have a job and you don't have a stable place to live, and maybe you're struggling with addiction, and maybe you're struggling with mental health, and maybe you can't even get medical care, how do you do that? Who's going to be your support network? Well, that's what certified peers are able to do. We're able to go find those things. I don't have a quote-unquote practice where you come at 10 o'clock, we talk till 10:50, I say goodbye, see you next week, go out in the lobby, get my other client, my next. I don't do that. I spend up to 4 hours a day with clients. There might be a lot of things we do that day. We might sit and fold laundry for an hour on her couch because she just finally had enough money to get all the laundry caught up. That's cool. I don't mind. We're talking, we're accomplishing. I'm showing empathy. There's equity between us. I'm not better than she is. I can fold her laundry by me. Her therapist can't do that. Her doctor's not going to do that. Her med management nurse isn't going to do that. I'm going to do that. And that's where we become that bridge. And when I tell the clinician, when I go back to the office and I say, yes, she has missed her last 2 appointments. Here's the situation with the car. Here's the situation with not having gas. Here's what I did to try to help it. And she's feeling pretty good about herself today. She got her laundry all done. But what if I partnered with just the client? What if I said, "Oh, that bitch. Yeah, you know what? She probably doesn't have to worry about where she's going to find her next gallon of gas." That wouldn't work then, would it? I wouldn't be building a bridge, I'd be building a wall. If I went back to the clinician and said, "Oh my God, you are so tone deaf. Do you not realize that the people we serve can't always do XYZ?" That would not build a bridge, trust me. I had a very young clinician a couple of years ago, it must have been around COVID, very young intern actually, come up to me in the hallway and say, "Hey, do you know what a food bank is?" I'm like, "Well, food bank, I mean, it kind of sounds like it'd be self-explanatory, but yeah. "Do you know where there is any?" "Yeah, I know there's lots of them." What do you need?" "Well, my client is new to the area and she said she needs to find a food bank." And I didn't know what that was. I said, "Okay, well, do you know what zip code your client lives in?" "No." "Do you know what school the kid is going to go to?" "Yes." "Okay. Well, for that school district, I come down to the office. I'm going to give you a piece of paper with lists. They're going to have names. They're going to have emails. They're going to have phone numbers. They're going to have addresses so that she can find the place closest to her." And then I have a big deep file cabinet in my room where I keep personal hygiene and non-perishable foods and socks. But it dawned on me that this girl at 26 years old still lived at home, um, was on her mom and dad's cell phone plan, mom and dad's car insurance. She didn't pay rent, and she didn't know what a food bank was. So it's also my job to educate the clinicians, and I get to do that at staff meeting when they, talk about a client. Then I say, "Okay, what can I do to help?" And sometimes they look at me like there wouldn't be anything you could do. I have a master's degree. Yeah, I don't think your client cares about that much, but so, and a lot of it is just about the bottom line and the basic stuff. Um, Another story I really like is about a clinician who complained about a 15-year-old client's mother who called every morning and yelled into the voicemail because she didn't answer the phone about the kid not going to school and the Becca bill and yada yada. And she says, "The kid won't give me a release to talk to her mom, so I don't answer the call." I said, "Oh boy, that's going to really piss her mom off. I don't want to meet her mom." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" She says, "I don't know. She kid, basically, mom goes to work before the kid thinks it's reasonable for her to get out of bed and get ready for school, so she sleeps in, and then she misses the bus, and she doesn't want to walk, and then she doesn't go to school that day. And then they fight about it when her mom gets home." I said, "Oh my God, if I had to do that 5 days a week, I'd be yelling in your voicemail too." I mean, she knows kids in counseling. She drives her here. Hello. And she just had no idea, no plan, no nothing about how to make that stop, so she just didn't answer the phone. I said, just can you just call back and leave her a voicemail to call me? Or answer the phone and tell her that I'm waiting to hear it from her. And she did. And I went and I met her after work and we had a coffee and we talked about what the different options were. And one of those was something that there's no clinician on God's green earth was ever going to do, but I agreed to do it. I had another peer come with me. Mom left us a key under the mat. of the apartment. She called me when the kid didn't get up to go to school. We went and let ourselves in. I knocked on her door, called out her name, told her it's Miss Clem from Sound. She came out. She goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, your mom called me and said you hadn't gotten up for school and you'd missed the bus, so I'm here to give you a ride. Go get dressed. If we hurry, I can take you to McDonald's for an Egg McMuffin before we go to school." And she, okay. So I became part of that mom's village. She's a single mom. There's no older siblings. There's no aunts and uncles, nanas and papas. There's just her and this kid. And you're asking someone who's already considerably depressed themselves to handle the depression and anxiety of a 15-year-old girl alone. And just sending them to counseling once a week and letting them vent probably wasn't doing it. So we worked it to where she got a youth peer and a counselor. And pretty soon she didn't need a counselor. She just had the youth peer. And they'd gotten involved in all kinds of things like the YMCA and some kind of a painting class. Not sip and paint wine class. Definitely not that. It was for youth. And they were able to have dinner together. They were able to talk to each other without this daily grind of you didn't go to school and the school called me and yada yada yada. And the mom was able to hear her. And I told her, if you really listen, I don't care what she says, you listen. And then you feed it back and say, so what I hear you saying is, and that's what we do. And we're really good at it. And so that's why it's important to share it not just with the client, but also with the professionals that we partner with. When we can partner with the professionals, we can have better outcomes for our peers.